Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Tonight, we need to talk about EMP Gremeowde. This is a really, really insane card coming from Phantom Nightmare. I think this card is just so cool. I think it's a little bit understated because there are some bigger stuff in this set that's kind of drawing the big attention. But I think this card really has some cool value, especially for some decks we already know are like decent decks. So like the fact that this card helps them out actually does become quite interesting. So we'll get into that. We'll talk more about that as we go. We're going to start by going over what the card actually does, if you don't remember, because it did get revealed like almost a month ago, so you know what I mean? It's nice to refresh there. And then we'll talk about some of the applications that I've looked at with this card that I actually think are pretty interesting there, because there's really some cool stuff generically, as well as a couple of specific decks that I think have a little bit of extra synergy for this card. So here we go. Let's start off by going over what this card is. Obviously, it has like that IP Masquerena lore, which is really cool. This card specifically seems to be like IP Masquerena's little bomb that she like drops on people, which is really cool. And you kind of see that with like the like almost trap effect on it that like can get triggered. So this card's cool. First effect. If a Link monster is on the field or in either graveyard, you can special summon this card from the hand. That's already really cool because that just means you know, even if you go second and your opponent is playing any sort of Link deck, this card doesn't even need you to do anything. You can just jump on field immediately, which is really sweet. You can only summon it once per turn this way. Makes sense. And then if a Link 2 monster or monsters you control is sent to the graveyard or banished face up, except during damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard if it was there when the monster was sent or banished, or hand, even if not. Then target one card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. Very, very cool card. That second effect kind of has a lot going on here. Basically, it's designed to have synergy with IP Masquerena and SP Little Knight. IP Masquerena being able to quick effect, like link off on the opponent's turn, would be sending a Link 2 to grave on the opponent's turn if it used itself, and then that would trigger this card to be able to banish and get you an additional bounce on top of whatever other thing you're making. If you're making Unicorn to spin something, if you're making SP Little Knight to banish something, there's extra utility there. That's also extra utility, by the way, in the form of you do not have to fire it on IP Masquerena. You can wait to hold it for SP Little Knight, which tends to be the best IP Masquerena target nowadays, in that you can summon this, banish something, because you used a Link and IP Masquerena. Then, if your opponent tries to do anything else and you're able to use this card's secondary interruption effect to banish itself and another monster, that's going to also trigger Gremeowde to get an additional bounce at that point as well. So it's a really, really cool card. Basically, what I like about this card more than anything is like it's always doing something. Worst case scenario, this card is just an extender. That's a worst case scenario. It's just an extender. It gives you a body on field, which you know isn't super high ceiling, but I think it's consistent in that you're always getting something out of this card. And then the bonus is obviously good going first and going second. Obviously, you would be playing this deck in a deck that aims to end on IP Masquerena, which would leave this card live to be an extra interruption on the opponent's turn, which is really great, as well as going second. Actually, this card may even have better application going second, because if you're playing a Link-based deck anyway, summoning this card as an extender and then like linking up with it, and then when you summon a Link 2, your opponent can't banish it or destroy it or do anything to send it to grave, or they're getting something bounced as a punish. And if they don't do anything to interrupt you, then you're just going to link up. And when you link up, this card can still trigger, because this card triggers if a Link 2 is just ever sent to grave, which is really, really nice. So like this card a lot. I think it just has really good utility, and I could definitely see a couple of decks kind of messing around with it. So the last generic card that I thought was kind of interesting with this is Dark the Dark Charmer. Not because this card actually sends anything to grave, but I think like going second, it's a pretty cool idea where like if you play any deck that plays like a Link 1 and you're able to like summon EMP Gremeowde, link into Dark the Dark Charmer, because EMP is dark, so that becomes super easy to do. Then you're able to like go after a monster in your opponent's grave. Go after a dark monster. If this doesn't resolve, it's probably because your opponent tried to negate it, and it either got negated and destroyed, maybe negated and banished, but usually you don't see too many negate and like bounce, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And in which case, if this card gets removed, boom, you're able to trigger your EMP Gremeowde and punish your opponent with the bounce. Transversely, if it does resolve, you get to take a monster from your opponent's grave, link off with it, and boom, bounce a card while also getting that link material as well. So pretty decent card as well, I think, to kind of combine in here as another option. I thought was kind of interesting. And then we get to the three like actual most interesting applications here for specific decks. The first one here is Sprite. It's got to be Sprite. This has to be the first one that comes to mind. This is a level 2 extender that gives you a bounce when a Link 2 leaves the field. Sprite already likes ending on IP Masquerena. It likes ending on Sprite Sprint. So it already plays right into this card so well, and because it's a level 2, it's exactly what the deck needs in terms of it can be an Exceed material for a Gigantic Sprite or another Exceed. It can be a level 2 target to summon out of the deck off of Gigantic Sprite to get it in rotation, because that's all you really want to do with it. Same thing with Sprint. If you're not on the Nimble package, this actually becomes a decent send target off of Sprint. Just send it, and it's going to be an interruption if you're ending on an IP board. It's pretty good. So I think that's actually a pretty cool application there. Sprite has to have the best synergy with this card overall. And I think it's solid. The only thing that I have trepidation about with this is like going first, you have to get a Link monster out. But that's not the hardest thing to make this card live. You know what I mean? The deck just doesn't play Link 1s. That's really the only gripe you could have about it, is without Link 1s, you're not like opening this card up super, super early. You kind of have to get 2 monsters on field, then into a Link 2 normally with Sprite, and then worry about it. But that's a small gripe, I think, for all of the other synergies this card has with the deck. Plus, this card may just be a one of in the deck, right? You just have it there where, like, if you draw it, sure, it's an extender. But if you don't, you pull it out of the deck off of Gigantic for that interruption. You send it off of Sprint, whatever, get it in rotation, and then it does its thing from Grave. So it's a cool card. I think that's probably the best synergy overall. Next archetype I would say is Sky Strikers. This one's really cool because you don't see a ton of archetypes like this that, one, have their own Link 1, but also have multiple Link 2s in terms of utility that really make use of like generic monsters, right? Normally specific archetypes like this they'll be locked, right? But Camellia and Zeke can use generic materials to make Zeke at least one material, but that's fine. This would be the one. Plus it's a Link 1 based deck, so like you super easily, super quickly get out a Link 1 so that you can summon EMP Gremeowde. Plus I love that EMP Gremeowde is a card that you don't even usually want on field anyway. You just want it in Grave. So then being able to like summon it as an extender after you've made a Link 1, make something like Camellia going first potentially. That's going to get you a dump for something like Engage. Then you can link down into Kagari. If you're going second, this also works because then you can immediately try to bounce something to break into the board while attempting to go into Kagari and get an add back. You're chain blocking as well, so a lot of cool things there. And getting back engaged, then engaging, and you're going off from there. Also making Zeke going second to just banish a monster and start breaking into that board. And then if Zeke gets negated and destroyed, you punish with a bounce, or you link Zeke down to get advantage, and that's when you get an extra bounce there as well. So actually this card has some pretty cool applications. Plus it helps you play into making a Little Knight on the opponent's turn, or not on the opponent's turn, on your turn going second easier as a good just simple extender. To like banish something or threaten something. And again, so you're already threatening one card. If they try to do something, you can use the SP Little Knight Annoying Effect to tag out, which probably baits another interruption. And if they don't, you're just removing another card. And then when you do, you still bounce something else. So really plays well with something like Little Knight, especially going second. Just has a lot of cool utility there. Now, obviously, Striker is not normally known for playing a ton of like outside Striker cards, so I think one of the weird things with this card would definitely be like if it's not super easily searchable or you don't want to see it all the time. Like in Sprite, because you can sprint send it or Gigantic summon it out of the deck, right? It's way more accessible. You could get away with playing one card. This is the kind of deck though where you're not getting access to it like that. So are you gonna play 3 of it? Is that a little bit overkill? Would you rather just play 1 or 2 of it? But does that mean you're not seeing it enough and that's not worth playing at that point? That's definitely a little thing to talk about, but I do think it's an interesting card for this archetype for sure. And the last one here, it's just Cyber's Good Stuff deck. The last thing I didn't mention about this card, it's a Dark Cyber's level 2, which is pretty good. So I'm already somebody who messes around with Code Talker every once in a while, and I'm always keeping an eye on it because it's a deck I've always enjoyed playing because it's like one of the most slept-on Cyber decks that's ever come out. But the cool synergy there is that like Cyber Dex 1, just put Cyber's Link 1s on the field. Basically, it's your starting play almost no matter what version of a Code Talker deck you're playing. So this card is made live immediately, super quickly. This is a deck that Link climbs all the time. So get this card engraved going second, and then as you just attempt to Link climb, you're getting extra pressure to play into a board with. And I would also say, the one thing of like that gives me a little bit of pause here is that Code Talkers in general don't end on IP Masquerena. That's never really been something they did, but you're not locking yourself on your opponent's turn. So if you just want to play one Masquerena, one SP Little Knight in the deck, that does give you a way to just, you know what I mean, Masquerena Cyber, so you can make her on your turn, but you can't use links to make her, so that's a little bit awkward, and you would have to play that extra slot because otherwise the deck wouldn't have a great target to link into that's just Cyber's based, so you would probably still want to play a Little Knight. So it's more so extra deck space than anything, but if you can make space for it, I think this card becomes pretty spicy, and it's still maybe playable even without the ability to like do it on the opponent's turn because it's just get it out there and get it set up and like go from there. And then like later on in the grind, it helps you like crack back into a board, or even just hard going second like helps play into a board. It could still have enough utility without even trying to do IP Masquerena end boards in this type of deck anyway. So just cool stuff worth mentioning. These are the 3 decks to me that like stand out as like the most specific synergy with this card. There may be some other ones. Please let me know in the comment section down below if there's anything else specific archetype wise that you thought makes specifically really good sense, kind of like these ones, just extra synergy, not just being, oh, it's a Link deck, good enough kind of thing. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. But there you go. EMP Gremeowde, really, really cool card. Please don't sleep on this card. Keep an eye out for it. I hope it's not a common. I hope it's like at least a super. But we'll obviously get there when we get there. So thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know your thoughts down below on this card. Just going a little more in depth on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that stuff down below. I'm out of here, though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you. Peace.